Not to make you feel old or anything, but blogging has been around since 1997. And in those 15 years, would-be journalists, activists, beer enthusiasts, writers, and even more have discovered that blogging is a great way to let them sharpen and hone their craft. Now, while the very first blog post may be lost to antiquity, what we do know is that I am Evo Terra, and this is the Books and Beer Hangout.
Welcome everyone to Books and Beer. My name is Jeff Moriarty, and we are here with a very special guest to talk about Blog to Book, a how-to hangout. I would love to introduce you to Miss Pam Slim, entrepreneur and instructor. Hello, Pam.
Hello.
Hey.
She's great at blogging, but the microphone...
Not so much.
So what else did you add to your resume, and are you drinking anything with us this evening?
I just finished tea. I was just mentioning I actually don't drink alcohol. So I'm not really a beer enthusiast, but my latest thing I'm loving to imbibe is kombucha, I think Evo was calling it, or you said rotten cabbage.
Yeah, I think that's what that means.
Yeah, but I'm really enjoying it. So I wish I had one to drink with you, but I don't.
Oh, all right. Jeff?
Well, this evening I have a collage collaboration between Deschutes and Hair of the Dog. This is a new beer. I thought it would be a fun light beer to try out, and it is a wickedly strong beer. So I will be covering for Pam's alcohol consumption and hope to still be intelligible by the end of this particular show.
Intelligible. I love it. So, yeah. So, all right. Well, I am drinking a standard wine, the Dale's Pale Ale, a good old standby in my fridge, and enjoying that very much. So while I pour this, Jeff, and you enjoy the massive high alcohol content, why don't we get into talking with Pam, our subject matter expert, on what it means to go from a blog to a book.
So why don't we start at the beginning? Your first blog to book experience was?
My first blog to book experience was on my blog escapefromcubiclenation.com, which I started in 2005, in October of 2005. And what was interesting, I think, about the path is I did not set out when I started my blog to think that it may develop into a book. It was a wild, grand experiment to build connections, get known online for an area that I was really interested in, which was helping corporate employees leave and start a business. And the more time that I began to write articles and share them and actually work with clients, the first actual real thought that I had about putting together a book was because of a client I have here locally in Arizona, where all three of us live, who is a wonderful guy and a software engineer and very organized and structured, and we'd actually meet in person, which is kind of rare. I usually meet with my clients over the phone or Skype. And so he would come with my blog post printed out and carefully highlighted with notes about all the posts. And after a few weeks, he was like, you know what, could you just write a book? Could you just put this all in a book so I can stop printing out your blog posts? It's getting a little overwhelming. And I was kind of like, okay, yeah, I guess there really is more of there's a book here. There's a process that I go through with clients in order to figure out how they want to go from their job to starting a business. And so in the early stages, I was introduced to other people's agents and kind of shopped around the ideas, was told they were pretty much lame and pedestrian. That was my favorite response from a New York publisher who actually ended up publishing my book later. But, the first attempt was just throwing stuff together. And after being kind of disappointed by that and a little ashamed and everything, I kind of shuffled back to what I love, which is writing blog posts, and I did that for another year or so. And then lo and behold, a publisher from Penguin Portfolio approached me and asked if I wanted to do a book. And so I think that it was based on having written for more time, gotten more into the groove of just writing things that I knew were relevant to my clients. And then when it was good enough, frankly, to hang together and have enough meat on the blog is when I think my publisher began to believe that I was also capable of putting it together. And I did as well, too. I began to really feel the book taking shape at that point.
Okay, so you've already carved a multi-year swath there. So I'm going to go back to the beginning and dig in a little bit. So what was your motivation in blogging? What were you really trying to create with this content of work? You weren't out trying to write a book, but what was the common thread for your articles? Just helping people, or?
It was. I definitely initially chose a blog as a means to reach an audience that I had no idea how I was going to reach. And if you think about it, my prior self-employed life was as a consultant to large corporations. So I work with, they hired me, the large corporations hired me to go in and work with people inside companies to make, better places to work and equip leaders to manage others and so forth. That's the place that I found all of these people who really, it was not everybody, but many of them would pull me aside and say, hey, how did you do it? How did you leave your corporate job to start a business? I would love to do it, but I really don't know how. And I recognized that there were very specific things that were not being said in the corporate environment that was not safe to say, and I could only go so far with the information I provided to them without bumping up against the ethical line of feeling awkward if I was being hired by the company to coach their employees. It just didn't really feel right. So the metaphor that I thought of, and I remember this day so well, sitting in my home office in Mesa, knowing hundreds of people who could potentially be clients, but also knowing that it was not ethical for me to contact them to try to get them to work with me as a coach. And I had the thought of I think I need to go to the cafeteria, maybe kind of disguise myself and go sit down maybe in some kind of corporate cafeteria and begin to talk to people. I thought, could I send out flyers? Could I, what could I actually do to get things going? Because I had never read a blog before and I didn't know what a blog was at all. So I took a course from a woman named Suzanne Falter Barnes about getting known, as it was called Get Known Now, about building an online presence. And one of the assignments was to write a blog. And after doing that, I realized it was the Trojan horse, right? Because I could be writing and that would slip under the thick steel walls of corporations, and then employees could be reading what I was saying, but there wasn't any direct connection that I had to make with past clients. So it was, I definitely wanted to share the information. Frankly, I also did want to get clients and build my business because that was a new direction that I was going of wanting to work with individuals as opposed to corporations.
Okay, well, what I'm hearing there is one of the first points that comes up when anyone talks to me about blog to book. And people who say they want to blog because they want to get to a book deal, always struck me as putting the cart before the horse. And it sounds like your story is you very much had something you wanted to say, an audience you wanted to hit, and as your content developed, then it became book-worthy, for lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like, what's the metaphor? I always go to dating metaphor, so I'm trying to think of maybe a better metaphor that's not just dating. But, well, okay, I'll go to the dating metaphor, or marriage, A lot of
do an airplane metaphor. Go.
I totally need a new metaphor, but these ones work so well. It's like if you're sitting back in your life and you're thinking, everything is going to be happy, all my problems are going to be solved if I just meet the man or woman of my dreams, and what I want is marriage. I want marriage, but actually what you can really say in that case is I just want a wedding. I want to go through that ceremony of a wedding, aka, I want a book deal. But really what marriage is, as both of you know, being happily married to wonderful women who I adore, and you're both very good husbands, so thank you for that. You know that the marriage itself is really nothing to do with kind of that particular thing of just, going through the marriage ceremony. It's so much deeper, it's so much more difficult, it's so much more complex. And so when I get the same thing, when clients might come or people that I meet at conferences and say, I really want a book deal, my first question is always, well, why? What is it? What is the message that you're passionate about getting out there? Why a book? What is it in particular about a book that's really going to make that message happen? Because frankly, wow, is it a truckload of work? Wow, to be not just writing the book and creating the content, but doing everything that you need to do to continually feed and nurture a network of people who will be interested in reading it and buying it. You know, you got to feel it from a deeper place.
You know, and I think, Pam, that's one of the things where bloggers have an advantage is that they're already used to. If you've established a blog and you are really generating good content, then you know what it takes to do that. So I think they have an advantage over people who are starting from scratch. But I'm curious. I mean, obviously you had written this blog and you had lots of great content. But when it was time to put it in book form, how much more work was there than you thought to take the stuff that you'd already written, all these great ideas that looked really fantastic in a browser, but then when it's time to put them on a printed page, was it kind of a reality check for you?
It was huge. It was overwhelming. It was like a Greek tragedy, seriously. It was, oh my God. It was so hard. I had no idea what it was like. I remember being lost, you know, within Microsoft Word for a long time. And what was interesting is, even though I had written on the topic and I had created a proposal that hung together in terms of the topics, for a long time, for a few months of when I was writing, I actually didn't even think to utilize any of the information that I had on my blog. I know it doesn't make any sense. It's kind of crazy. But it was just that first thing of like, oh my God, I need to write this book. And so I just started to go through and was thinking of creating everything from scratch. And then finally I got to a point where I was like, wait a minute, I actually have some pieces.
I've done this work.
But a lot of that depends. And maybe when we start to get towards looking at different options of what people may do, there's very, very different ways that you might create blog content based on different objectives that you might have. Somebody might have a very great thorough plan of how they might actually be blogging their book as they're creating it, already knowing that specifically the posts that they're writing are going to be fitting within the structure. The way that I blog is totally like free form, free dance of whatever hits me on that particular day, I will write it. I wasn't writing a post in the context of a book where there's really an overriding story and you have to think about how one piece fits to the next and how a narrative, a story of one person might pick up in another chapter and move it through. So that's the part that took a while. But I will say, just kind of as a technical tip, it was a huge day for me. I'll never forget when I finally, out of fear and desperation, thinking I was never going to be able to finish the book, I sent a project request on Elance to just make a directory of copy all the posts that I'd written on my blog and to create a Word document with all the titles of the posts and all the copy of them into one big massive document with a table of contents that had hyperlinks to all the blog post titles. And it happened, somebody did it overnight for $50. I am forever thankful. I forgot the name of the person who did it, but thank God for this person. And so all of a sudden I had all this content that was so easy for me to say, oh yeah, I forgot that I'd written that post on X, and I would copy and paste a section, put it in the different chapters, and that was really a turning point in terms of realizing how I could be utilizing some of the content. It was still probably, I never analyzed it, but I imagine it's something like maybe 70-30, 70% original content, 30 blog posts, something like that, maybe 60-40, but there was a lot of new stuff that I wrote for the book.
How has going through that process gone back around and changed the way you blog? I mean, do you now try to make more continuity between posts, or has it not really had an impact and you still freeform it?
No impact whatsoever. Yeah, I value freedom so much.
But you don't learn from your mistakes. We get it. Right, so, yeah.
Yeah, I found that if I try to structure things too much, I can have an idea of the kinds of posts that I like to write. I like to have a different combination of different types of content, how-to content, little inspirational case studies and stories, features of different clients. There's different categories of things I might write on, but I haven't, because I'm working on a new book right now, cross our fingers, right, that will move through very quickly, but it is more, the blog is the place to really get the ideas out on paper and to see, or whatever, on the web, maybe not paper, and see what the response is. And when people get interested, that's an idea of ooh, that's part of what helped me write this proposal for the new book is, wow, that post on that topic really struck a nerve and got a lot of links back and comments. So that sounds like something that's maybe a core part of what it is that I want to be writing about.
has using the blog now that you've got the successful book already out, and you know you want to write the other one. You just mentioned you're using the blog kind of as a sounding board to find interesting ideas. So the last time you and I talked in person about the book was probably, I don't know, 8 months or so ago. Has it changed? I mean, based on the feedback you're getting from people, has your overall concept of the book changed based on what is getting feedback?
Jeff is laughing because he's listened to like 15 different versions of what it is. And 8 months is right. Like 9 months to make a baby, it's kind of pretty much that same process of agony. But yeah, I can't remember that conversation, Evo, so I'm not sure what it was at that point a few months ago. But it definitely has gone in evolution. It's like it starts out, this is my process anyway, but it starts out with an idea of like just some strong feelings about core topics that I want to be writing about in a book. And it's like looking at something that's like an emerging figure coming out of the mist where I can feel it that it's there, but I can't necessarily describe it. And that's the poor 15 conversations that Jeff had to sit through where I was trying to articulate it, but I couldn't quite do it. And then after a lot of work, and that's the beauty, I think, of writing a proposal, which I actually highly recommend. It's kind of a pain, but the beauty of a proposal is you really do have to capture the essence of what the book is and what the core areas are and why it's important. And that is really, really essential for understanding what's involved in the book.
But those posts that you've made that have kind of changed your opinion on what the book should be and what direction, are you now at least identifying those and saving them off so that you've already got a chapter, at least one maybe, pre-written?
Yes.
All right.
Yes, I like to think that I've learned about the writing process from the last time, although you guys can check in a couple of months when I'm right in the middle of it.
Cool.
But probably the biggest lesson I learned is just to be, really organized from the beginning, create the Word document that has all the different chapters in it, sort through all the content I've already done, have interviews transcribed and all that core content that can be plugged in and not just staring at a blank screen. So I do, I'm really hoping it's going to be a different and better process. This book as well, I'm going to have a lot of core stories of different people, so I'll be doing a lot of interviews, video interviews, and then transcribing those and using those as core stories in the book. So it's going to be a little bit different than Escape from Cubicle Nation.
So you learned from a lot of the problems you had the first time around. What new things are you running into your sophomore attempt?
Well, I think what's going to be interesting for maybe folks who have ideas for books that may jump a little bit the core focus of their blog, because my blog is Escape from Cubicle Nation, and the book is Escape from Cubicle Nation. The book that I'm working on next has some elements that are related to my core audience and my core topics on my current blog, but there's also a lot of other things that will be really different. So I think what will be interesting is how much I may be testing out certain ideas on my own blog, where I don't want to create like another blog to have two places that I have to be writing, because I think it's going to get too complicated. But I think that may be the challenge, is in testing out different ideas. I think it'll work where I can try it out, but it could be that for some of my core readers, they may not really want to move that direction with me, for what it is that I'm writing about. So I think that's going to be an interesting experiment.
Okay. Now, since you wrote your first book, the landscape has changed remarkably with ebooks, starting to outsell paperbacks and traditional books. What are your thoughts on the ebook market, and has it changed the way that you're approaching putting this book out? You're still going print first, correct?
Right. Yeah, I think I'm excited by the ebook market. I think it's amazing. On the business side, I think I see so many possibilities of courses and instructional things to do with ebooks that are amazing. And I've seen people like you guys know who have really found tremendous benefit to going directly to self-publishing or just doing ebooks and bypassing a traditional publisher altogether. I think the decision is so personal. For me, it's really interesting because I had many conversations with other authors, many of whom are saying, forget it, I'm not going traditional publishing, I'm just going to do this on my own. I actually find huge comfort with the right publisher. I love my publisher, but I find huge comfort of working with people who really, really know books, who know about editing, who know about the book market, who know how to shape a story, who know what the landscape is of different kinds of voices, you know, working with a great editor who can help me to find mine. And so that to me is hugely valuable, where then I as a writer can just focus on writing and having them focus about everything else about distribution and, you know, everything that has to do with distributing the actual book. And I think right now it would kind of stress me out more to be thinking about doing it on my own, all those other elements on my own, because it really is like a whole other business and a whole other side, rather than focusing on what I want, which is writing the book and then thinking about marketing. I love those two elements, writing it and marketing it, but everything in between, design, production, editing, distribution, is not really something that I want to be doing.
I hate to make you pick between one of those things that you hate the most, but I'm going to. Which one of those things
God,
do you hate the most?
I don't want to pick. That limits my freedom. Evo.
Sorry, back to you, Pam.
I think it's equally like.
No, let me change the tone of the conversation.
Yeah.
Which part of that do you think that authors in general, and you being one of them, just simply aren't good at? That maybe they delude themselves that they are good at. You know, my hint would be editing. What is the piece that really you need someone, whether it's a traditional publisher or it's some professional who really gets that piece? What is the one that most authors fall down on their face when they don't do it the right way?
You know, I would think, like I was going to say, I was split between the editing, you know, the actual editing process of having a great editor who can really understand it in the context of other books, for sure. But on the other hand, it is the whole process of just how you actually put the book together, how you get it in distribution, how you get it in different formats to be distributed if you want to self-publish it and get it through booksellers, like all of that, even talking about it.
Understood.
And a thank you for what I'm sure will become the thumbnail for this video.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
Appreciate that. Freebie.
Usually it's my goofy face. So.
Yes. Okay, we're almost out of time, so last question. So for people who are bloggers and want to go down the blog-to-book route, what would you say are your top couple of tips that you would give them on any aspect?
I would say first is really think about what kind of information do you really want to get out there? And a blog is a great way to be just getting in the practice of writing and sharing your great writing and ideas with people. It definitely is a great way to be noticed. That's the way that I was noticed by my publisher, and it's a really, really good way to get things going. But make sure that you really think about what is that overall body of work that you want to be creating, and what is the best way that you can begin to get people excited about the ideas that you're sharing. It's not just the content itself, it's also the people that you have around you in your ecosystem that can really help to get your writing known. I've done a couple of blog-to-book panels at South by Southwest, and one of them I did with Guy Kawasaki, who I call my link sugar daddy, who was really helpful for my blog, and he wrote the foreword to my book. And he said, it's not, we think sometimes about, who you know as a good way of like making deals happen. He said it's actually who knows about you. And actually in the audience was Kathy Sierra, who I have worshipped and idolized for as long as I've started blogging. And he was saying that about Kathy. Guy and Kathy had never met before. And Guy looked at her and said, yeah, I know you. I know who you are. And it was such a cool moment, because Kathy's like, wow, that's so cool. And I was sitting back saying, oh, my God, but it's Kathy Sierra. And it was really something when you realize if you're writing really, really good quality stuff from your heart that is significant, that means something in the world, and you're conscious about connecting with people who care about it, that's how the message starts to get out that will interest publishers and readers and other people who can help to get your message out.
Yeah, very, very good advice. Quality is obviously extremely important, but also it's not no matter who you know, but as you said, or as Guy said, who actually knows you, making those connections online that we just can do so much easier now with the power of the web behind us, and that's, I think, what digital publishing is all about in the future. Pam, thank you very much for joining us here on the Books Beer Hangout. This was a fantastic show. I think we gave a lot of great advice out for people. If you want more information about Pam Slim, check us out at epublishunum.com or go straight to her at Escape from Cubicle booksnation.com to get a whole lot more. And, of course, that link will be in our show notes. This is the Books and Beer Hangout. We do it every Thursday night at 6 o'clock-ish or so, depending on where you happen to live in the world. You can just go to booksandbeer.com or at ePublishUnum, and you can follow us here on Google+. This is broadcast live also on YouTube Live, and we appreciate those who've watched it over there. And again, every Thursday night we do this program. So again, Pam, thank you very much for joining us. On behalf of my partner, Jeff, I am Evo. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks,
Cheers.
guys.
See you next week. Bye, Pam.
Cheers.